Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Despite the serious attempts to take the ceasefire agreement to phase 2 and declare the ending of the war and finally reach an agreement that many said will be a long-term agreement between Gaza and Israel, the Ansarullah movement in Yemen, led by Abdul Malik al-Houthi, is not really waiting on anything. So for those of you who don't know, he released a warning several days back, giving Israel 4 days to allow aid into Gaza. He said that Israel is imposing a blockade. Part of the conditions of Ansarullah to stop the attacks is for Israel to open the borders and allow all aid in, something that clearly Israel has adhered to an extent, but they had a massive breach several days back when they stopped allowing all aid to go into Gaza. Ansarullah, they're monitoring. And from their perspective, Israel doesn't only have to be attacking Gaza for them to be taking action against them. It's also a case of Israel not allowing aid into Gaza. And the declaration of this attack coming from Ansarullah, or the attacks that will be taking place, we had more clarification about them before. At one point, Ansarullah said, we are ready with all types of military action to be taken against Israel. However, when they were speaking about the actual breach of allowing the aid into Gaza and Israel stopping the aid, they said, we will resume our naval attacks. This is where the things get interesting. And this is where we need to understand that things might start to escalate. So there was this report today from Abdul Malik al-Houthi saying that the operations against Israel will be carried out immediately after the deadline ends. Now, when is that deadline exactly? Ansarullah made this warning on the 7th of March. Today is the 11th of March, exactly 4 days after. That means post 12 midnight, Ansarullah have the right to attack Israel if Israel does not open the borders with Gaza, if they do not allow aid in, to be more accurate, with Gaza. To understand exactly what type of actions Ansarullah will be taking, we need to listen to exactly what he said, exactly what Abdul Malik al-Houthi said. He initially stated that he's calling the Arab and Islamic regimes of the responsibility, of course, to help the people of Gaza, but he wasn't really building much upon them. But then he said the armed forces are ready to carry out the operations, and especially regarding the deadline for bringing the aid into the Gaza Strip. What are these operations? This is the interesting bit. He said, we announced to the entire world that we will give the mediators a 4-day grace period. That's previously. And we will resume our naval operations against the enemy if it does not allow humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. He also added, if the enemy continues to prevent aid from entering Gaza after the 4-day grace period and continues to completely close the crossings, the Yemeni armed forces will resume naval operations. We, at the moment, are only talking about the naval operations. Abdul Malik al-Houthi is not talking about the ballistic missiles landing on Israel, for example, or any of their large operations against Israeli targets, military and strategic targets inside of Israel. He's only talking about naval operations, and there is an understanding to that. Because if Israel is not directly attacking, well, despite their breaches, and they are only imposing this blockade, then the response is a measured response to counter the Israeli actions. Israel is taking it seriously, especially with the fact that tomorrow we're supposed to hear more news. There were reports in Israel, including in Haaretz from several days back, saying that we could see an agreement on Wednesday, as early as Wednesday, which means that Israel clearly considered the position of Ansarullah when they had the negotiations and when they decided to proceed with them. And the argument of Ansarullah and the actual ultimatum clearly was something that Israel considered, because if it wasn't for them, well, Israel wouldn't have minded really stretching it for 1 to 2 days. But having this declaration of the ceasefire agreement, or our waiting to the results of that ceasefire agreement on Wednesday coinciding with Ansarullah's ultimatum, that's something that clearly proves that Israel indeed considered the position of Ansarullah. Now, the big question remains, will Ansarullah, will Abdul Malik al-Houthi order his movement to start attacking Israel immediately after midnight if no aid is in? Will he give them a few more hours? Judging by the previous actions of Ansarullah, they don't really wait that much. So there is a very high likelihood of them starting to attack Israel tonight after midnight if they do not allow aid into Gaza by tonight. Will they give them a few more hours? Again, there's no guarantee, because they were very quick to respond and they have been very fierce with their approach with Israel. And one important thing, Ansarullah, they don't get their information from like media. From the media, they get their information from verified sources on the ground. So they already have representatives from the Palestinian side with them in Yemen. They are constantly in talks with them, and they get verified information about aid going into Gaza. So Israel can't all of a sudden claim that, oh, we allowed all aid to get in and you can't attack us now. No, they will have that verified information, so Israel cannot trick them. So tonight is going to be a very interesting night. If Israel will start allowing aid to go into Gaza, this would prove that the effect of Ansarullah had indeed worked, and Israel does not really want to escalate with them. And we also, of course, need to include the countries supporting Israel, like the United States and Britain, who led the genocide coalition in the Red Sea. They also don't want that headache from Ansarullah. They spent over a year trying to stop their attacks. Finally, there's a ceasefire. They stopped attacking ships related to Israel. And of course, these countries are linked to Israel. That's why they wanted them to stop the attacks, not for any other reason, because international trade was still going. But from their perspective, that's a headache. And there is a very big reason to believe that they also applied pressure on Israel to resume, because they don't want this headache in the Red Sea, including Egypt, because Egypt relies heavily on all of the movement from the Red Sea. With the Suez Canal, and from their perspective, having all of that just because Israel doesn't want to allow aid in, there is no real argument, and there's not a lot of thinking to be made to see which side you need to apply pressure on and which side you need to be standing with. So tonight's going to be very interesting. And of course, we will monitor all of these developments, see if Israel indeed will open the aid into the Gaza Strip and allow it to the Gaza Strip, or will they risk getting this escalation from Ansarullah in Yemen that could spiral things out of control all of a sudden, despite these talks about a deal coming in the next few days.